Welcome to the Society. I'm Hypnotic Spectre.
And I'm Chaos Orb.
And today...
What happened? How'd I end up here? What'd you do? What'd you do?
You had to bring up chaos magic.
They need to know. The people need to know.
Well, this is chaos magic. Let's go over Chaos. Let's start with the rules. Chaos is a deck composed of 100 unique cards similar to Commander. Each card in the deck will range from instant, sorcery, enchantment, or artifact. Chaos creates a new phase. So normally you'd have untap, upkeep, draw. Now you have Chaos, untap, upkeep, draw. The Chaos die, which is a D6, looks essentially like this. What we have is 2 blank sides, 2 sides with our world symbol, 2 sides with our eye symbol. Eye represents a personal chaos, meaning whatever card is to be flipped would only happen to you and your board state. The world symbol, however, would trigger for everyone on the board. So you basically would roll it and then flip a card from the chaos deck, and whatever the card says happens to the board state based on your personal board state or world board state.
So basically you have a 33% chance for any individual outcome. Either nothing happens, something happens to you, or something happens to everyone. It's pretty simple. So let's go ahead and start by flipping the first card, and we'll start going over some of the cards that are in this deck and some of the effects that can really change everything. So we start off with Heroes Reunion. This simple instant that gives everyone, or you, 7 life. So again, if it's a personal chaos, you gain 7 life. If it's a world chaos, everyone gains 7 life. You'll notice that a lot of these cards say target. We ignore that for this particular play style.
So moving on to the next card here. Just like you would gain 7 life, Chaos could taketh away. Lava Spike, deal 5 damage to target player. In this instance, target player is either personal, just you, or everyone, multiple targets.
Now, what's important here is, if you notice, we put the Lava Axe on top of the Heroes Reunion, and that's because this is called the Chaos Discard Pile. And that's important because when you get to cards like artifacts or enchantments, they stay in effect until they're covered by another card. So as long as they're the top card on the discard pile, you're going to deal with what they do. That being said, with instants and sorceries, they work just like normal instants and sorceries. They trigger once and then they go away.
Correct.
So going on to the next card, we have Conflux. So this sorcery is pretty awesome.
I would like it personally for a game for me.
Yeah, right? And this can be a huge game changer if it's a personal chaos.
Absolutely.
You get to do all this stuff and everyone else just has to watch. Granted, if it's a world chaos, then everyone gains the benefits.
Yeah. However, that doesn't mean you could be playing a 3-color deck and someone could play a mono deck.
Exactly.
So I can get 3 cards, you can end up with 1. I mean...
Exactly. It's interesting. We've learned throughout the years of playing this style that you can never really tell what type of deck is going to benefit you in a chaos game. It really does embody the name of chaos. You can't plan for it.
So let's see what we would have next. All right, fantastic. So in this case, I'd get to add 1 swamp to my mana pool for each creature card in my graveyard.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's great if you run a lot of creatures. That's even better if you run a graveyard deck.
Absolutely.
But if you have like a control deck or a combo deck and don't have any creatures, it's not going to really benefit you.
That's true. You can end up with a card flip that ultimately ends up in no effects taking place.
Exactly. We've learned in our plays that building a combination of cards that can really benefit or hurt every style of deck you can think of really makes for unique play.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a good one. Because again, if it happens to everyone, everyone gets hurt. Like, everyone takes 6 damage. Everyone loses a bunch of creatures. That sucks. But if it just happens to you, everyone's going to be really happy.
That's true.
You're not.
Although, you could be the only player with an indestructible creature, for instance, and this card triggers, and you're like, no big deal. And that's really where a lot of interesting play takes place, because you can have something terrible trigger, but it not necessarily hurt you. It really depends on the deck, which is really great, because you can build a Chaos deck to be however you want, but if it's built the way we've built ours, almost every card could have a good or negative effect to your play.
Exactly. Building the deck is really important because you can have what we did here, which is around 33% beneficial cards, then 33% not so beneficial cards.
And then kind of a weird mix in between.
Yeah, like 34% of like just weird cards that do different random things.
So triggering a Kamigawa's Reach.
Kadama's Reach.
Kamigawa.
Yeah, Kamigawa's Reach. All right, sure.
I was thinking of the block, not the...
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that triggers you get to search for some lands. But you can, again, do all sorts of different things. You can build like a group hug type of Chaos deck where it's just beneficial stuff. You could put together a deck that is nothing but terrible things like To the Slaughter. And this is actually a particularly interesting one. So, as you can see, this has 2 different abilities. This one, target player sacrifices a creature, and again, that target player is determined by the die, either worlds, everyone, or personal, yourself. Now, Delirium, though, that's where things get interesting. You could, depending on how you want to go about it, you could decide to ignore added effects like this, but we like to keep them involved. So say it's a world chaos. Every player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. Well, say I have 4 or more cards in my graveyard that are different types, and my opponent has like 3 cards in their graveyard. Well, he only has to sacrifice 1 creature or planeswalker. I have to do both because I trigger Delirium.
Exactly. So it definitely makes things interesting. And even group hug decks, like we mentioned, if you gain 7 life, is it a group hug? Because it's not really a group hug for me.
Exactly, if it's just personal.
That being said, not everyone runs token cards.
Exactly.
Which makes for very interesting play, because you could be short on creatures. Or maybe you have an abundance of creatures. Maybe you have a populate deck. Don't know. But you get a card like this to trigger Advent of the Worm, and you get a 5/5 worm creature token. If that's a turn 1, if that's the first time Chaos triggered, that's fantastic. That also leads a good point that we didn't mention.
That's true. Chaos does not start until the beginning of your 3rd turn. We've tested this a bunch of times, and things can be broken if it happens right away. Just like with Advent of the Worm, if it's my 1st turn and I trigger a personal Chaos, now I have a 5/5 green worm on the board, no one else has it, I'm in a really good position. But if we wait till turn 3, it gives people the ability to start building out their defenses, putting together their combos, or have answers for cheap things like this.
Absolutely. Another thing to note, too, is Chaos deck cannot be targeted, countered, canceled. Nobody can target the Chaos deck. So this card, or any other card, will trigger regardless of anything you have. You can't counter one of the cards from triggering.
Exactly. You have to kind of treat every Chaos card as if the card itself had Shroud or protection from everything, whatever you want to call it. You can't target it. You can't interrupt it. You can't redirect it. It just happens.
Cannot reverberate it, copy it,
Exactly.
anything like that.
Yeah. Now, you could try playing a version like that. That might be interesting. We've done it in the past. It didn't really work out all that great.
It gets complicated very fast.
But again, when I say we've tried a bunch of things, if we go back to the card beforehand, the Advent of the Worm, we'll talk about this in a future video, but creating tokens gave us an interesting idea on how we could fight Chaos.
Yeah, so we'll definitely go over that.
We'll go over that in a future video. But anyway, so we also have some interesting cards in here, like this one, draw 2 cards, then sacrifice a permanent.
Definitely one of the more strange blue cards. You don't see sacrifice a permanent in blue very often, if ever.
Yeah, and what's great about it is this is one of those ones where we would call it weird. It's beneficial, but it's also
at a price.
Then we put in some Destroy Everything.
Yeah.
Classic Wrath of the Gods, Armageddons, things like that.
Definitely game-changing, especially if it's just your board state.
Exactly. Now, we're going to go ahead and post our personal deck list for the deck we're showing you, probably in the
Description
below. And you'll notice that in this one, we don't have Armageddon, even though I just mentioned it. We have a few different decks. We've learned that if you put too much Destroy into Chaos, you just have these long games that keep going on forever where no one actually gets to make any progress. So we have some Destruction in here, and we kind of spread them out across all of our Chaos decks.
Yeah, definitely the best way to go. Time Reversal. We're going to be talking about this in a future video.
Yeah, this is a fun one, inspired by some Power 9 cards. But
Which, fantastic. You could have a card like Wrath of God trigger, and okay, you wipe out all your creatures, but then you have, for instance, Time Reversal, and you're almost like right back at the start.
Oh, we've definitely been in games where we've gotten, turn 12. We finally have gotten boards set up because Chaos has left us alone for a while, and then like Obliterate would happen, and then Time Reversal, and
then you're almost starting over
again.
We're
back at the beginning, essentially.
Yeah.
So now, this is where things get interesting. Like we said, artifacts. They stay in effect as long as they are the top card in this discard pile.
Yep.
Now, where this gets a little wonky is, say Winter Orb was triggered and it was a world ability. So it now is in effect for everyone until it gets covered. However, if it was triggered as a personal Chaos ability, it would still stay in effect, but it would only affect you whether or not it was your turn until it's covered. So, say it goes around the game constantly, like 2-3 turns, nothing happens. It's still going to affect you. But the second someone else rolls anything, personal or world, you put the top card over.
Absolutely. So that definitely can hurt or hinder, or just put a game at literally a standstill. If all of a sudden you can't tap your lands, or you can only untap a land at a time, definitely can slow things down a little bit.
Yeah.
Or also could buy you time. Maybe you need that.
Exactly. Also, Standstill is a great card for a Chaos deck.
Absolutely. I think we might have one in there, maybe.
We might in this one. I honestly can't keep them all together. So you're starting to get the idea where we're going through, and you have all sorts of different things. It's pretty simple, but it's a new style of play. So
yeah, it basically allows you to take any games, either a hyper-aggressive deck versus a build-a deck, just like right out of the packaging. The versus decks or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've definitely played like really hardcore tournament games. Tournament decks that I've built against starter decks and have lost because Chaos was not kind to me.
Yeah, it's definitely makes the game a little more light if you want to maybe have a couple drinks and have more of a fun play style.
This definitely lends itself to large games. The more people playing, the more interesting, the more fun, and the more chaotic it can get.
Fantastic card.
Yeah.
Reduce instant sorceries by 2. I mean, that would be great if it was my turn, but if it's everyone's turn, that could be a little rough.
Exactly. There's not really much else we can say about this. You get the point at this point, I would imagine.
There is a lot of great cards in here. One of my personal favorite things about Chaos is it allows you to take cards that you would never play with. For instance, you have sets that come out and they have 8, 9 drop instants or sorceries, and you would never play with that card normally because it's just cost too much to run in a deck. Maybe certain commander decks could run them, but a lot of times you have this really interesting card that never will see any play. You can now take that card that's, by the way, probably a 50-cent mythic, buy it, put it into your Chaos deck, and now all of a sudden you have an interesting way to play with that card because you don't have any mana costs, obviously, with this.
So I'm not going to say any specific cards, but what I will say is all of those 7-drop red enchantments that you look at and go, great, I'm just going to throw this in my pile of bulk rares and never look at again. They make Chaos a lot of fun.
Yes.
They also make Chaos kind of confusing because some of those cards are crazy, but I think you know the cards I'm talking about.
Yeah. Scrambleverse.
Oh, yeah, Scrambleverse is a good one.
Yeah. So, we will leave you at this point, and I think the best way for us to maybe show you this going forward is I think we'll have to show you an actual 1-versus-1 game with Chaos active.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That'll be maybe part 2 to this video, just so you guys can kind of see how it plays out against 2 completely different decks. And I think we'll maybe make this a series and show you some other versions of it, some with Commander maybe, and different things like that.
Yeah. We will show you how to build different versions, how to play against Chaos, how to play with Chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you have any in particular interactions that you're curious on how it would function, let us know. We'll tell you in the comments. Other than that,
yeah. Any suggestions for a good Chaos deck? Anything we put in that you think is crap? Definitely let us know.
So we'll have the card list in the description. And anything else?
No, I think that's good.
All right. Keep them salty.
Tap them down.